opening. Nifty was down about 23 points at open this morning. However, we have seen some recovery in both headliners, and currently Nifty is trading in the green. However, it is still currently below its immediate resistance levels of about 19,700. Now, shifting focus to the broader markets are also showing signs of weakness. Now, the small cap Nifty small cap index was up about 0.2%, whereas the mid cap index was down about 0.1% in the morning trade today. And I mean, the broader markets also saw some correction, but the the magnitude of correction wasn't as much as in the headliners. Both indices dropped about 1.5 to 2% in the week gone by. Now, among the sectors today, apart from Nifty, auto and media and realty stocks, most sectoral indices were in the red today. The IT pack was down about 0.4% in the morning trade. PSU Bank, which has which outperformed the market and rather was the only sectoral index which performed in the week gone by, also witnessed some profit taking. It was down about 0.66% in the morning trade. Nifty Bank continued on its muted path. It was down about 3.5% last week. This morning it was down about 0.1%. Apart from that, Nifty IT, I think I already mentioned that, it is also trading sluggishly this morning.
All right, so that of course is the lowdown of how Monday has started on the stock markets. Let's quickly get in Gaurang Shah, Senior VP, Geojit Financials, joining us this morning. Gaurang, thanks very much. Appreciate you taking time out. Let's quickly begin with what's weighing on markets this morning. A lot of global and domestic cues.
Thank you, Shweta, and morning to all of you all. So I think it is good to see stability in the market as we opened for trade this morning. Remember last almost about 25 odd days since the time we started this month of September, we've been all over the place from 19,260 1st of September to 20,200 somewhere around 15th or 16th of September. And from 18th of September till date, we are at possibly 19,670 odd levels. So this 25 odd days, we've been all over the place. I think stability is what should possibly be the order of the day. Don't expect any major sell-off or any kind of major outperformance. Remember, we are in the F&O expiry week, monthly F&O expiry week. We expect a little bit of choppiness and volatility as we approach the expiry this week on Thursday. But I think we should possibly find some stability, consolidation, and possibly some amount of buying also at lower levels, which we have witnessed even last week. So I think possibly if you've been waiting down at the sideline expecting a correction, I think one should possibly use these kind of corrections to accumulate sound quality stocks from a long-term point of view. Your colleague was mentioning, Suyash was mentioning about crude oil prices still above $90 a barrel, NYMEX, and $93 a barrel Brent. And the rupee is also weak this morning against the dollar, 83.10, the last that I saw. That is creating a little bit of concern. But overall, post last week correction, I think we should find a little bit of stability.
The rates in the European markets. Good morning, Gaurang. Hi, this is Karthik. What about the higher for longer sentiment, which is likely to continue in European markets? Is that likely to weigh down on Indian markets as well?
Morning, Karthik. So I don't think so. From the beginning of this year, we all were aware about what the situation is in Europe and US and rest of the world. We all were aware that inflation is a concern over there. Interest rates regime is possibly going to have a significant impact not only in their markets and economy, but also across the globe. So, whatever happens in Europe and US, my sense, Karthik, is that it may have a knee-jerk reaction. And nothing very significant which may lead to, huge sell-off. Though last week beginning, we've seen a decent number of sell-off from the foreign institutional investors, but against them, I think the domestic institutions have got the liquidity, power and capability to withstand any major kind of a sell-off. So it may be news-based knee-jerk reaction, which may last maybe intraday or maybe about 1 or 2 days.
Okay, and Gaurang, you also mentioned dollar against the rupee at about 83.1 this morning. Now with India by next year likely to be, in fact, slated to be part of the emerging market index of JP Morgan, how do you see that really panning out for the Indian rupee in the next 1 year to 3 year horizon?
So I think that will play a significant role, and along with that, what is the view and commentary from the Monetary Policy Committee, and what Governor Das has to tell us. But possibly this may improve. Two things that I am quite optimistic about this inclusion. One is the participation, and second is the liquidity. As and when it happens, of course, it will not happen immediately, but we should see some amount of more inflows in terms of dollars. And if we are able to prove numbers on the larger, macro data points, then the flight to safety from the equity market as far as FIIs are concerned could possibly slow down, and there might be positive flows also.
Okay. Before Suyash comes into stocks in action today, one more question from me, Gaurang. Do you feel now that the days of bull run, the days of frenzy over the small cap, mid cap are now pretty much coming to the end of their term, or is this just a minor blip right now and we'll see the rally in small caps and mid caps take off again?
So, Karthik, we discussed this. I think we've been interacting almost every week, and over the last week or fortnight, we had sound caution in terms of the run up in the broader markets, that is mid cap and small cap. Certain names were flying around without much of credibility and more of liquidity chasing into those stocks. So our view at Geojit is that, if you touch anything and everything in the mid and small cap universe and expect to make profits, I think that's not going to be the order of the day. You need to be sector specific and stock specific when you're trying to venture into broader markets, that is mid and small. And with respect to the small cap universe, I think you need to have elevated risk appetite. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to be the Robin Hood, then possibly stick to the large cap where valuation is still quite justified and there is earnings visibility also.
Just one quick question from me before I hand over to Suyash. As far as foreign money coming into India is concerned, you said it will happen. FPIs have sold off over 10,000 crore rupees in the first 3 weeks of September. That remains a cause of concern. Do you see FIIs, FPIs coming back to India given the volatility that we have seen over the past 25 days?
So during that week only, Shweta, we made a high of 20,200 when they were selling.
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
So I guess they will come. And remember one thing, I think with the kind of GDP growth rate that we have, with the kind of earning visibility that we have, and with the kind of optimism, yes, there are two particular issues. One is state election up until December 2023, and then 2024 we have a big election. So from December to possibly May, end June till we have the outcome of the big election next year, markets could possibly face a little bit of choppiness, and FIs might possibly, or FPIs might possibly pause, not necessarily sell, but maybe pause till the time there is clarity.
Now, Gaurang, I mean, at a time when, treasury yields are at a 16-month high, the dollar index is surging, is it really rational for us to expect foreign investors to return to emerging markets at this point in time?
Well, so it's more of a perception that you have, Suyash. Okay, if not India, then where do they go? In their own markets, they have issue in terms of inflation, interest rates, etc. And remember one thing, dollar is not only strong against the rupee, dollar is strong against the major currencies, including euro, including currencies of emerging markets. And possibly you might see elevated levels on the dollar front against the leading emerging market currencies, including Indian rupee, for some time. But whether it is going to stay elevated above 83 for a longer period of time, our view is that that's not going to be happening. And in terms of flows coming into it, well, what my sense is that any fund manager, whether it is a domestic guy or a foreign institutional participant or an FI, would definitely look at incremental growth wherever he or she invests. And I don't think there are many economies like India in this part of the world which will give you that kind of a run rate.
Now, Gaurang, in the recent months, or at least in the recent rally that we have seen a sectoral shift or churn around. First it was the SpaceX stocks, then it was the railway stocks and defense counters. Any particular theme that is looking attractive to you, at least right now, for a horizon of, let's say, next quarter or so?
Well, short-term calls is something that I normally don't take, but let me give you a perspective. I think possibly by first weekend of October or second week onwards, we'll have the second quarter earnings unfolding. Now, if I had to look at that and possibly identify a couple of sectors, then by default, banking and NBFCs are going to do good. Autos will do good. Cement with the kind of offtake and price hikes, that looks interesting. If you are not looking at immediate short to medium term, and if you have a little bit of longish time horizon, then post the first quarter numbers, I think a lot of IT companies have announced, quite a few big deals. So IT will be in spotlight. Our sense is that specialty chemicals and insurance, life insurance related plays are likely to come back with the earning visibility. So these are the few pockets, and the three sectors that you mentioned, Suyash. I think it's not game over for defense related stocks or railway related stocks or power generation, power transmission, distribution, and power equipment manufacturing companies. The government has spoken about a vision for the next 3 to 5 years. And if I have to look at the order book of all these companies in these three sectors, then there is absolutely no disappointment. In fact, there is extremely positivities in terms of more orders coming through. And by the virtue of execution of that order book, earning visibility is going to be very, very strong.
Gaurang, last week we saw that SJVN corrected sharply after government decided to divest some of its stakes. Now there are about 21 PSUs which have in which government stake exceeds the 75% threshold. Now, in the light of recent run-up, should investors in these stocks be concerned?
So you have to look at the run-up also, Suyash. SJVN, NHPC, of course, no specific comments because we don't have a coverage. But whenever stocks run up maybe about 30-40% in a matter of maybe about a week, fortnight, or maybe a month, there has to be a little bit of correction coming in. And these are the names which were historically speaking, correct me if I'm wrong, Suyash, since the time they got listed, they were underperformers. And this is exactly the story that I was telling you when I was talking about power generation, transmission, distribution sector. This order books is likely to grow exponentially, and of course, execution of that will translate into earning visibility. So it's a perception of with what view you have invested in these stocks. I'm not saying that these orders will make translation or transformation in earnings immediately. These are long kind of projects that come through, and they take equally long time to execute. So if you're getting your kind of return that you had in mind post this run up, then I think it's wisdom should prevail upon you not to expect more, not to be greedy, and take home whatever you can.
Now, before we move on to stocks that were in the news today, JSW Infra IPO opens today. Gaurang, should one subscribe to that offering?
So we have issued a IPO note on JSW Infra, and I think it's one of the largest companies in terms of the services that it provides into port, container warehousing, logistics, etc. At the present price band that the company has announced, we have issued a IPO note with a recommendation of subscribe from a long-term point of view. This is also one sector, Suyash, which will take time because, as India opens up in terms of manufacturing and services activity, I think logistic activity will also go up, but it's not going to be immediate. It's going to be over a period of time. And I think this Bharatmala Pariyojana and Sagarmala Pariyojana should augur equally well for the logistics sector.
Gaurang, there are also reports of JSW Infra wanting to bid for airport projects in India. I know you don't like to comment much on Adani, but do you see this as being, one step in the direction of one formidable player who could be out there giving Adani a run for its money?
Well, there is place for everybody, Karthik. I mean, more the merrier. I think, and when competition comes in, it makes a very healthy environment, not only for the incumbents who are competing each other in that sector, but also for investors, because it becomes a very healthy and a challenging atmosphere. And remember one thing, government has also spoken about improving connectivity tier 2, tier 3 cities under Udan 1, Udan 2. And there are going to be more, airports, ports, etc., coming up in the next couple of years.
In fact, as we are speaking, Jyotiraditya Scindia, Civil Aviation Minister, is inaugurating Tezu Airport in Arunachal Pradesh, and apparently there are 3 more to be launched, in quick succession. So obviously, Udan is finding some wings, but yeah, carry on, Gaurang.
Yeah, so that's what I was mentioning, and not only this, I think in the next 2 to 3 years or maybe 5 years down the line, you will have better connectivity. That will give opportunity to new, companies in the aviation sector as well. And equally so for those companies which are into, port corridors, container warehousing, logistic, etc. So, and having only one dominant player is always not very healthy. Like, in case of telecom, there are 2 major players. And with the kind of population that we have in India and the subscriber base, I think it would have been healthy if you would have more competitors. So, I think competition is always healthy, Karthik.
All right, competition is healthy, but do we have enough airlines is the question, and are the airlines that are currently in action going to be operable over the course of next couple of years? That of course will be a question again, but let's move on to some of the stocks that we're tracking.
Certainly, Shweta. So one of the stocks that I was tracking earlier this morning was Delta Corp. Now the stock is down about 18% or so this morning, and it is on the back of Delta Corp receiving a tax notice totaling about 16,822 crore from the Directorate General of GST Intelligence on Friday. Now, Delta Corp said that the demand notice is for the period between July 2017 to March of 2022. Now, the first notice of about 11,000 crore is directly raised against Delta Corp, and the other 5,600 crore notice has been raised against 3 of its subsidiaries. Now, Delta Corp said that the GST notice is based on gross bet value and not gross gaming value, and it said that it would pursue legal remedies to challenge this order.
All right, before we discuss other stocks, quickly let's understand what's the story. It's been building up for a while. There was a tax notice. The game has now upped. It could be as much as 31,000 crore rupees collectively. Over 80 companies, online gaming companies to be particular, they are facing a retrospective taxation, but they are saying that we have paid up. We paid up on the basis of what we knew as far as GST is concerned. What's the big story here, Karthik?
Shweta, the big story is that the government in its 50th GST Council meeting said that we are only clarifying and we are not changing the GST rate on online gaming. In the same breath, the government also said that there is going to be no distinction between game of chance and game of skill. So online gaming, e-gaming, all of that sort of, came into the highlight, of the GST 50th Council meeting. And the government said that there's going to be 28% tax on face value and not really on the platform fee. I think what the gaming companies really wanted was that, okay, instead of 18, we are happy to pay 28%, but that 28% is going to be on the platform fee we charge, not on every rupee that gets planted onto the platform for gamers to play with. So the winning prospect of a gamer then gets reduced, because on every 100 rupees that you put in a gaming platform to play, you say 28 rupees of that is straight away going as GST. So their chances of making a winning of even a rupee then go up 29 times. So they've got to make 29 rupees to make 1 rupee of winning, because 28% straight away goes into tax. And even this 1 rupee which they earn is actually subject to a tax of 30% or so. So overall, that has been the bone of contention between gaming companies and Government of India. Now, this GST order which has now come, 80 companies, and now the total volume of GST evasion, as the government is calling it, is at about 31,000 crore rupees. Now, gaming companies are saying that this is retrospective and they are likely to move court again. Remember, I think in the case of Gamecraft, the matter was, cleared by Karnataka High Court in favor of Gamecraft. And it said that government cannot charge because the rules are ambiguous. So the government cannot charge whatever, I think 22,000 crore rupees or, whatever the government was claiming was due from Gamecraft. And now it seems that with these added on Delta Corp, on other AT companies, the added retrospective tax is now to a tune of about 31,000 crore rupees, which is obviously going to make a dent in the gaming companies.
All right, and there has been a movement on that case as well. Government moved after Karnataka High Court order. Government, the Directorate General for GST collection, they moved to Supreme Court.
That's right.
Supreme Court has stayed
the Karnataka
matter,
High Court,
which essentially
order.
means that this is still in the realm of speculation whether this retrospective taxation will be applicable or not.
And
the
is
online
it fair
gaming
to
companies,
call it retrospective because the government said we did not change the tax rules, we only clarified the tax rules.
Right, and players have been paying up GST. So I think it's I think somewhere, I mean, if you come to think of it, so far they've been paying taxes, they've been paying 18%, and the government been accepting that.
18% on face value versus now the requirement
28%.
of 28% on the entire amount.
All right.
On platform fee versus face value.
Absolutely, and that is going to be a bummer for a lot of online gaming companies. Gaurang, what's your view on online gaming companies? Is there a future as far as e-gaming is concerned in India?
Honestly, I think the attraction towards dabbling has never been at a lower level as far as India is concerned. And, though we don't have any specific coverage on any of these companies, just a perception over here, Shweta, I think there has to be clarity with respect to online and offline gaming. With the kind of policy changes by the government or by the GST Council, and the recommendations that have come through does create an atmosphere of a hanging sword, which with a lot of uncertainty and no clarity. And whenever whenever the matter ends up in either a High Court or a Supreme Court, unless and until you have a decisive outcome or a judgment or an order, there will be choppiness and volatility. Unfortunately, we don't have any coverage on either online or offline gaming companies, so I won't give any stock-specific recommendations or replies with respect to buy, sell, and hold. But I think one needs to be cautious, and like I mentioned, unless we have clarity, there is always going to be choppiness and volatility with respect to news flow.
Now, Gaurang, certainly because you don't have coverage on gaming stocks, but for a company like Delta Corp, which has a market capitalization of about 4,000 crore, a tax notice of 17,000 crore seems like a death blow, right?
Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you don't know what will happen next. So, assuming anything is going to be also equally catastrophic, Suyash. So, let's not jump the gun.
Let's move on to other stocks that we're tracking, Suyash.
Yes, Shweta. So SBI was also in the news. The state-run lender has raised about 10,000 crore through long-term infrastructure bonds at a coupon rate of about 7.49%. Now, the proceeds of the bond will be utilized to enhancing long-term resources for funding infrastructure and affordable housing segment. Now, SBI has outstanding long-term bonds worth about 39,718 crores. With this issue. Now, Gaurang, I mean, we have seen PSU banks run up quite significantly in the past 2-3 months or so, but more prominent names like an SBI or a Bank of Baroda has not really participated in that, in that surge, whereas small and mid-cap banks have really run up like 2 or 3, like 150 to 200% in that span of time. Now, do you expect that these banks, prominent names like SBI or a Bank of Baroda, can play some sort of a catch-up rally from here on?
Well, we definitely think so. And, double-digit public sector banks had a run-up because of the kind of liquidity flows and the, discussion we had in the beginning about small cap and mid cap. We are a little bit concerned with respect to the consistency of earnings, Suyash, when it comes to smaller government-owned PSU banks. because out of 4 quarters, 1, 2 quarters will be extraordinary, and the rest of the quarters will be, equally a disaster kind of a performer, wherein the positivities will get wiped off. So we don't have coverage on the smaller public sector names, but State Bank of India, Bank of Baroda, Canara Bank, PNB, these are the four banks which are under the fundamental coverage. Out of this, I think Bank of Baroda is under review. So no specific comments on Bank of Baroda, but the trigger that I mentioned about second quarter earnings and a likely possibility of better numbers or better than expected numbers from the banking pack, including public sector banks and private sector banks, would possibly be a trigger for re-rating of some of the public sector banks.
Now, in terms of valuation, Gaurang, how are the private banks looking vis-a-vis PSU banks? Now there were reports that there'll be some contraction as far as net interest margin is concerned for the banking space. So, how, in terms of valuation, how are the private banks looking in comparison to the PSU names?
So, for the time known to me, I think private banks, Suyash, has outperformed public sector banks for a pretty long period of time. With the kind of merger and with the kind of policy changes that the government has put in place with respect to public sector banks, we have definitely seen the health of the balance sheets improve. Yes, there was a time when 2 or 3 banks, public sector banks, got merged with one public sector bank. So that merger process and things to evolve over a period of time takes time. So, and then now that time is over, and possibly, improvement is quite visible. With respect to private sector banks, we have coverage on almost all private sector banks. And one bank that I would, step forward over here and recommend with the correction that we had last week on fallback of some, foreign report about concerns on earning is HDFC Bank. No denying, Suyash, that maybe it's not going to be case that banking sector is going to be outperforming for all the 4 quarters in a financial year. There will be a case of a little bit of underperformance, loan book not growing at the kind of level that one would have expected. Net interest income and margins possibly may come under pressure. But notwithstanding what happens in 1 quarter, if you are a long-term investor, then looking at the historical performance of most of the private sector banks, we would definitely have inclination towards private sector banks. So I think one bank, because of the correction last week, which is HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank is also after a decent performance, is consolidating. Axis Bank has managed to cross over 1,000 level after a long period of time. Kotak Mahindra Bank, with the transition or a new person coming in place of Mr. Uday Kotak, that clarity is now gone through. And as far as IndusInd Bank is concerned, our view is that the commercial loan book growth is going to be an outperformer, which may lead to earning visibility as well.
All right, Gaurang, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for taking time out. Thank you for joining us here on News 9. And a story we are tracking, in fact, visuals of which are flooding internet, and it's sort of a meme fest now. Are you looking to buy an iPhone 15? If yes, you'll have to stand in the queue and perhaps punch up people or two.
Yeah, Shweta. So, no, I don't think I have any inclination towards buying the iPhone 15, not now anyway. 2 reasons. Number one, of course, it is damn expensive to buy one, right? So, I'd rather wait for iPhone 16 to get launched or maybe iPhone 17 to get launched before the iPhone 15 prices really come down. But I think I'm an odd exception to this rule. Okay. And look at visuals which are coming in from Mumbai, look at visuals which are coming in from Delhi. These are the kind of queues that people have formed all through the weekend, starting Friday, running up till yesterday, because the iPhone 15 actually hit the Indian markets, and not just India, in fact across the world. It started its sales only on Friday. And since Friday, these are the kind of queues that iPhone retail and reseller stores across the country have seen. In fact, I was looking at social media, there are people who waited as long as 17 hours in a queue to actually get their hands on the iPhone 15.
Okay.
And it's not that the iPhone 15 is being given out to them free. That 17 are to pay 2 lakh rupees or so to a store to get your hands on the iPhone 15 is crazy, but that's not all. And I think we'll play up some of those bites and those visuals also. But fist fights between retailers and customers. I mean, which sort of, place, which civic society do we really live in? Where, I mean, just look at this. There is a clarification which has come from Chroma this morning, and Chroma is saying that it is going to investigate this matter. Apparently, it's a Chroma store in which this fist fight has literally broken down between customers and retailers. Let's play up the ambience here and try and also see if we can get the, the sound bite of the person who waited 17 hours in queue.
All right, there doesn't seem to be an ambience, so people who perhaps recorded it on mute, but we do have a bite.
मैं कल दोपहर से आया हूँ 3 बजे से 17 घंटे लाइन में रुका फर्स्ट आईफोन लेने के लिए इंडिया के पहले एप्पल स्टोर से और मैं खास अहमदाबाद से आया हूँ ये लेने के लिए
अहमदाबाद में ऐसी सुविधा नहीं है क्या?
अहमदाबाद में लेकिन इधर का एक्सपीरियंस ही अलग होगा ना ये माहौल है इधर का वो कहीं और अहमदाबाद में तो कहीं पे भी नहीं होगा.
You know what? It's all about the experience after all. I mean, the guy took a flight from Ahmedabad to be in
Shweta,
Bombay.
It's worse than the airport, and the airport today is worse than ISBT Delhi. I mean, it is impossible to actually board a flight with the kind of queues that you have for security and for boarding. And is this what somebody from Ahmedabad really wanted to experience? I mean, I understand Tim Cook came to India 2 months ago, inaugurated the first Apple store in India, and then the second one soon thereafter in Delhi. But this is the Mumbai store, the Mumbai Apple store, the first one from Apple to be launched in India, and somebody actually coming in from Ahmedabad all the way to Mumbai to actually buy the iPhone 15 and have that experience of shopping from the Apple retail store and not through one of the Imagine or the online or the other resellers as Apple calls them. But yeah, I mean, these are the kind of queues, fist fight, and there have also been some sort of charges against retailers who are trying to upsell, accessories like screen guards. So screen guards being sold for as high as 4,000 rupees for the iPhone 15, and retailers telling customers that it's not optional, you've got to buy it. So somebody who's pre-booked the iPhone has walked into the store, now being charged 4,000 rupees for a screen guard. And if you refuse that, hey, I don't want it, or I'll take it from a local market, apparently your orders are getting cancelled because there is somebody behind you in the queue who's actually willing to pay a premium on the already expensive iPhone 15s.
Okay, clearly a lot of money there and money being spent for the experience. My screen guard is 200 rupees. I hope it does the same job. So as far as Apple is concerned, it's having a gala time, and it's having a gala time in India, not just by the way of customers, but also its expansion plans. You know, we discussed whether India is going to be the next home for Apple after China. And a lot of that is playing up as far as Apple's grand plans for India is concerned.
Absolutely, Shweta. So yeah, I mean, we have known for a while that Apple has been fairly serious about making in India, manufacturing in India. Not manufacturing directly, but manufacturing through its contract manufacturers, which include the likes of Foxconn, Pegatron, Wistron. So Apple is pretty clear that it wants to manufacture in India, and results of that vision are fairly clear. In fact, if you look at the data between last year and this year, Q2 last year, Apple had a very, very small share of India's smartphone export base. That has gone up to about 49% this year. So almost half of all the smartphones made in India for the export market today are Apple iPhones. Now, what is Apple really doing now? Apple wants to not just double down, triple down, but have a penta down, 5x sort of, bet on India, where it's saying now that its output from India could go up as much as 5-fold in the next 4 to 5 years. Now, what would this entail? This would entail about $80 billion worth of iPhones or Apple products made in India, some for the Indian market, some for the export market. Now, what is $80 billion worth? $80 billion is worth 3.3 lakh crore rupees. 3.3 trillion rupees worth of Apple products will be made in factories in India and exported overseas as well as sold within India. Now, since you're talking about the iPhone 15, which hit the stores only on Friday, remember, out of the 4 models of iPhone 15 which have been launched, two are already getting made in India, which is the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 15 Plus. So the Pro and the Pro Max are not being made in India yet, but the base iPhone 15 and the iPhone 15 Plus, the larger screen size phone, are both being made in India already. Now, along with this, Apple is also suggesting that AirPods could be manufactured in India starting as early as next year. But there doesn't seem to be yet a roadmap for making the iPads or the Apple laptops, the MacBooks, in India anytime soon. But I think even the iPhone and AirPods production going 5 times up, creating that sort of manufacturing base in India, employing the kind of people it would require to have 5 times more production, is great news on, on two fronts. Number one, this whole shift from China, where China is no longer the obvious choice to be the factory of the world, and that choice now being India. And second, I think India's own focus on diversifying the economy from a service-oriented economy to a manufacturing-oriented economy, seeing a large brand like Apple, an aspirational brand, a brand not known for compromising on quality, in fact placing a premium on quality, coming down and making in India and having a very clear roadmap for expansion in India, spells great news for India's overall manufacturing capability and the vision that was set out to diversify the economy out of services into manufacturing.
And to perhaps push that manufacturing further, not just in the smartphone business, but also IT hardware like servers, laptops. To do that, the government wanted to curb imports and put a ban on import, not ban rather,
a license,
a restriction on imports. That license, which was expected to come into effect on 31st of October, could not happen. There's a flip-flop. What's happening?
So, Shweta, there are mixed
There's a
reports
lot of pressure
there, right? I think there is definitely pressure. In fact, just last week, Friday, if I'm not mistaken, the global IT think tank ITI had spoken strongly against the government of India's decision to have these restrictions put in place. And these restrictions apparently were put in place with no consultation with the manufacturers of IT hardware products. And arbitrarily a decision taken on 3rd of August that we are going to put import restrictions. Remember, it's not a ban. These are import restrictions. What do these restrictions really mean? Let's break it down. These restrictions mean that you need to, as an importer, you need to now opt for a license, apply for a license from the government of India, where the government is, you will need to inform the government who you are importing from, not just which geography, but which brand and from which country are you importing, for that license to actually be given a go-ahead. So the government is going to greenlight a license on the basis of what it calls trusted partners. These trusted partners are both trusted companies as well as trusted brands, trusted organizations, which the government wants to be in the know of. Exactly, which the government wants to be in the know of, before granting that export license. So importers need to give the quantum of export, the brands that they are importing, the brands that they are importing, the quantum of import and the geographies from which that import is going to happen.
Right.
Now, apparently, there's a Reuters report which has been reproduced in many publications, which says that the government could be mulling a flip-flop at this moment, because remember, when 3rd August this announcement had come, soon thereafter 3-month extension was granted for importers to apply for this license, and that is due to come into effect from 1st of November. Now, the government on its part is saying that it's going to make the rule of or the process of applying for the license much easier. It is going to be an online format. You wouldn't really need to go physically, sort of move files, push files with the bureaucracy. And it is going to be done in a time-bound manner. But now this Reuters report suggests that the government could be mulling a flip-flop, where this 1st November deadline may also be pushed. Now, what is the official statement which has come from the government of India? The official statement says that the license would be implemented from 1st of November. However, for a period of 1 year, importers would be permitted to import. Right. So the government is saying that we are not saying that there is going to be no import from 1st of November. You will need to apply for a license, and only after that license is granted will you continue to import for at least a period of 1 year, a little less than a year. They are saying till about September 2024, companies can, or importers can, continue to import laptops. Thereafter, the government's focus is going to shift towards maybe more restrictions on import, more stringent, license disbursement processes, where the push would move towards procuring only those laptops, PCs, tablets, and other IT hardware which is made in India.
And so it's not just an import ban, it's a restriction, and a restriction on the back of the fact that the government is providing all the right environment for these companies to start making in India by way of a very lucrative PLI scheme, for which there are almost 40 takers as of today, and not just a PLI but also supporting them in terms of the semiconductor ecosystem that government is planning to build on. And there is a progress on that. Micron on Friday has broken grounds in India to set up a semiconductor business.
Absolutely. So I think a great initiative. We remember what happened with Micron, and we'll come to the PLI story subsequently. But since we moved to Micron, it was in July this year that Prime Minister Modi had traveled to the US and was literally pushing for business ties between India and US, particularly in the space of technology. Remember the meetings he had with entrepreneurs like Elon Musk. Remember the meetings Prime Minister Modi had with the founder of Micron, with the founder, CEO of Allied Materials, with visionaries like Ray Dalio. I think the idea was very clear that India wants to be self-reliant when it comes to semiconductors. And why semiconductors specifically? Because semiconductors, was one industry which was dominated by China, and it was one industry which became all prevalent, from smartphones and cameras to IT hardware to even automobiles. Pretty much anything that has electronic circuitry in it has semiconductors. And the idea of Government of India was to push semiconductor manufacturing into India and attract those investments. And Micron, along with Allied Materials, was among the first companies to sign an MOU with India. Remember, you and I were both a little skeptical at that moment, where we said that it is going to take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Within
it's not
3
something,
months,
yeah.
it's
So
huge.
in 3 months, ground has been broken. Fresh ground has been broken, literally and metaphorically, where the factory site in Gujarat has been inaugurated. The foundation stone has been laid. And this is going to be a factory which is going to directly employ about 5,000 people in Gujarat. And output is expected to come out of that factory as early as end of next year. So come December 2024, we will perhaps see the first batch of semiconductors which are made in India by a foreign player employing Indian resources rolling out of the factories by December 2024. Now, there are going to be certain, ifs and buts to this. Number one being, what is the size of the fab being produced? Is it going to be the 40 nm fab?
Nanometer.
Is it going to be the lower, more complex 28, 23, 21 mn fab? What is this fab really going to be, and what are the end use scenarios for the fab that gets produced in India? But fresh ground broken, at least start somewhere, start making something. It may not be the latest semiconductor technology, it may not be something which is very versatile with the pace with which the electronics industry is moving, but start somewhere and get to where you have to get to at some time in the future.
And this is being touted as the biggest investment under the very ambitious India Semiconductor Mission Plan, where there were not many takers up until Prime Minister went to the US and sought audience with Micron. And it looks like we're moving very fast rather towards a manufacturing economy. PLI,
look at the
Semiconductor
PLI
Mission Plan.
In laptops.
Absolutely.
Now, I think it's important to point out that just about a month ago, you had 40. The deadline was midnight, and you had 40 manufacturers or brands of laptops that put in that application to avail of the PLI. Now, reports coming in late last night suggest that as many as 30 to 32 of those 40 applications are eligible to avail PLI. And it looks like, and again, look at the pace with which this is moving. Within a month, you have possibly by end of September, early October, government is saying that the list of those beneficiaries of PLI, the brands which will participate in the production-linked incentive scheme of the government, should be announced by end of September / early October. By then, we would know which out of these 32 eligible brands will actually start making laptops, PCs, tablets, hardware in India. And again link this to the kind of economic opportunity, the jobs which would be created by way of this PLI in manufacturing of IT hardware is to the tune of about 75,000. 75,000 direct jobs are going to get created by way of this PLI. Now, look at the fillip that the government is receiving in terms of confidence that the outlay for PLI in IT hardware was 17,000 crore rupees. Overall, the PLI scheme is at about 1.97 lakh crore rupees, out of which 17,000 crore rupees, or almost 15% of the PLI, is allocated to IT hardware. And look at the response the scheme has generated, that it looks like that 17,000 crore rupee corpus may have to go up to about 23,000 crore rupees.
May not be enough.
17,000 crores may not be enough, and it may actually be pushed up to almost 22,800 crore rupees or 23,000 crore rupees to enable these X number of brands out of the 32 eligible brands, which include the likes of HP, Acer, Lenovo, Dell, to make in India and avail of this PLI scheme. Now remember, one exception to this PLI is Apple. Apple is saying that it is not going not needed. I think anybody would want an incentive.
But looks like it's not going to set up a plant
so Apple
to make.
does not manufacture directly.
Right.
So I think there was so much talk last month that, hey, why hasn't Apple applied for PLI? Apple hasn't, but one of its contract manufacturers, Foxconn has applied for this PLI through one of its subsidiaries. But this PLI is not restricted only to global brands setting up shop in India, but also Indian manufacturers. Dixon, for example, homegrown, Noida-based, publicly listed company, Dixon, through one of its subsidiaries, has bid for this PLI scheme. Lava, the maker of smartphones, seems to be, having its eyes on a larger laptop PC manufacturing base and has applied for PLI. So you have a mix of global as well as Indian brands vying for this PLI incentive, and hopefully manufacturing should, groundbreaking, and then manufacturing should kickstart, in the next couple of months.
All right, and it could happen in the next couple of months. Next couple of months are extremely very crucial for the government, state elections, going into national elections, and hopefully there'll be enough to show on the report card for the government to be re-elected. But before we wind up, important homegrown story of an airline seeking to become unicorn. Akasa is on the cards. What are the details do we have?
So the details that we have right now, Shweta, two fun details. Number one, of course, there is a report in papers this morning, in fact Mint reported it, that a $400 million investment is likely to be made in Akasa Air. And with that 400 million fresh infusion, the valuation of Akasa Air is likely to be $1 billion. $1 billion airline, just about 11, 12 months, 13 months into operation, just more than a year into operations, is going to wear the tag of unicorn, pretty much landing into that unicorn club, or taking off into that unicorn club, as you like to see it. So a unicorn airline from India, Akasa Air, at a time when Akasa Air has faced a shortage of pilots. 43 pilots have quit without serving notice period. A battle, legal battle on between pilots and the airline, at a time when DGCA has actually made a statement that there is no way for Akasa to claim that it has cancelled 24 flights a day on the basis of shortage of pilots. It is saying that Akasa Air has not furnished any proof that when it claimed to be cancelling 24 flights a day owing to shortage of pilots who had not served notice period. DGCA is saying that no proof thereof to suggest that the flight cancellation was directly linked to pilot shortage. Akasa Air also in the same breath saying that there are pilots in various stages of training right now who would be able to fly as many as 30 to 31 flights a day as soon as those multiple rounds of training end.
All right.
And a big battle going on the legal front, some funding coming in, and this funding of $400 million is going to be by dilution of stake of the Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, late Rakesh Jhunjhunwala family, where instead of increasing stakes, they are now looking at diluting stakes.
Absolutely.
And that dilution to be picked up by investors to invest in Akasa Air, taking the valuation to a unicorn status.
All right. So Junjunwala family that currently owes over 45% of stakes in Akasa Air, likely to dilute that. A secondary sale in pipeline. $400 million will be utilized to give better in-flight experience and also perhaps raise pilot salaries. Well, that's the word coming in from Akasa so far, which is currently in a battle with its pilots. Not the battle likely in favor of pilots as opposed to Akasa. A lot happening on that front. We'll keep getting all those updates on Newsline. Thank you for watching.
Do you have a very simple SOP?
If you put filth at the mango tree's root, it becomes sweet mango.
Spokesperson like Sania Miss written about more than the women's cricketer.
Journalist, for some reason, doesn't like an athlete. The narrative is very different.
So why have people been so much enticed to come and take over your businesses?
लड़की सुंदर होती है तो उसके पीछे बहुत लड़के आते हैं.
To us normal people, the doctor is somewhere in between us and the God.
When a patient's mother touches my feet, begging to save her child's life, I don't feel empowered. I feel humiliated.
Is it fair to call you an Indophile?
Very much so.
What about China?
A local problem is a global problem.
Suppose if you had donned the seat of the chairman, maybe by now Oxford or Cambridge would have had chairwoman as a legitimate English word.
She is the most qualified.
Giving good value system to children was more important than career.
How do you deal with success and failure?
First thing is to clearly know what you want in life.
Who is Lutyens Media?
It is a bunch of people.
What has Khan Market got to do about
Just
it?
a function of its location.
Duologue with Barun Das, world premiere on Connected TV from September 22nd to